Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Quran Precision. In this video, we're going to talk about the ta. And you might be thinking, I'm good. I have that one down. The ta is just like the English T. I'm good. You're right. It is the closest sound we have to the ta in English, but it is also different in some ways. And when we understand the differences between the ta and the t, it'll really help us kind of make our Quran recitation and our pronunciation a little bit more precise. So let's look at some English words and then compare them to some Arabic words. So when I'm reading this, I want you to really be thinking about how these two sounds are different. Try to really picture what are the differences between the two sounds. So in English, I have the word took. In Arabic, turab. Think about how the sounds are different. English, caught. Arabic, awqat. English, attach. Arabic, kitab. Okay, so think about what the differences are. We're going to talk about it. One way to kind of really see the difference between the two is if I took the English words here and replaced the T with an Arabic ta, and then took the Arabic words and replaced the ta with the English T. So let's try that. In English, I have the word took. If I put an Arabic ta instead of the T, it's going to turn into took versus took. Different. The next word, caught. If I took the Arabic ta there and I replaced it, caught. Okay. The word attach. Replace it with an Arabic ta, attach. Sounds different. Now let's take the Arabic turab, replace it with an English T, turab. Awqat. English T becomes awqat. Kitab. English T, it becomes kitab. Slightly different. You might be hearing it now. So now let's go into what is different about them. How should the ta be pronounced? So the articulation point, or the makhraj of the ta, is when you put the front of your tongue and you push it up against the gums just behind the front two teeth, these ones. The gums just behind those teeth, that's where your tongue should touch, okay? And you want to make sure to put your tongue in position and be completely situated before producing the sound, okay? So here is where the ta is produced. This is the front of the tongue. Notice that it's not the tip, it's not the very tip, it's the front. Okay, the front of the tongue is going to hit those gums right behind these front two teeth. Okay? And the way that sounds are produced in general, not just in speech, is by a few different things. So you can have two things kind of rub against each other, and that produces sound. You can have two things come together, that produces sound. You can also have things come apart, and it'll produce sound. So if I have my lips together and I have that buildup of pressure behind it, and then I open my lips and I release the pressure, it'll produce sound. So watch. I'm going to start with closed lips. Again, closed lips. That's the kind of sound we want for ta. So you want to fully touch and be closed, completely situated on that articulation point, and then release. Ta. So we talked about the articulation point of the ta. Now let's talk about some characteristics of the ta. So the ta is a whispered or voiceless sound, meaning there's no voice in there. Whisper. The other thing is that the flow of air when you're producing the ta is stopped. It's blocked, right? And what is it blocked by? It's blocked by your tongue. right? So there's a flow of air, your tongue is going to come, block it by pushing against the gums, and then you have to release it to get that sound out. Also, the back of the tongue is lowered, and the middle of the tongue is also lowered. Lowering the back and middle of the tongue makes it so that the sound is light and not heavy. So if we say ta and then lift up the back of our tongue and the middle of our tongue, it turns into ta, which is a different sound. So you want to keep the back lowered and the middle lowered. Ta. All right, so we talked about the articulation point of the ta. We talked about the characteristics of the ta. Now let's talk about some common mistakes. So as we mentioned, one of the biggest common mistakes is that there is not full contact with the tongue to the gums before releasing from that placement. Okay, and when we do that, sometimes what ends up happening is the next thing. We let out too much air. Okay, we don't want to let out too much air. That makes it sound a little bit closer to an English T. T, t, t versus t, t, t. There is some air, but not as much. Those two things are things that I had to kind of like train myself to do. Definitely things that I was doing a lot. The third mistake is that sometimes people tend to curl their tongue upwards and in. And this kind of depends on your native languages, right? So in some languages, the closest thing to a ta is something where the tongue kind of curls up and it sounds more like ta, ta than ta, right? So for the ta, your tongue should be flat. Front of the tongue touches the gums. It shouldn't be curled up like that, okay? For an example of what not to do with the ta, I'm going to pull up a video of myself reciting from years ago, and we're going to look at certain words that have a ta in it. What you're going to hear is a lot of air in the ta, okay? You're going to hear a lot more air than it should have. In this first clip, you're going to see the word kitab from Surah Al-Mutaffifin, kitabun marqum. Okay, listen to the ta in that word. Kitabun marqum, kitabun marqum, kitabun marqum. There's a lot of air. It sounded more like kitabun marqum versus kitabun marqum. This next one is going to have a few tas, so I want you to pay attention to all of them. Listen to how much air is being released. Try to think about if the tongue is in the right position before producing the sound. إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين. The ta in there needs some work too. The ayah is إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين. إذا تتلى, tutla has two tas. آياتنا. Let's listen again. إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين. Too much air all around. إذا تتلى, too much air. تتلى. آياتنا, too much air. آياتنا. In this one, you're going to see the word ختامه. ختامه. Okay, listen to the ta. ختامه مسك. ختامه مسك. Too much air. ختامه مسك. It sounded more like ختامه مسك. Okay, if you take out a little bit of that air, ختامه مسك. All right, that's it for our discussion of the ta. Remember, you want to make sure that your tongue is in position before you release the sound, and you want to make sure that you're not letting out too much air. All right, thank you. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And if you're looking for more learning and practice, go to speechprecision.com to schedule your free pronunciation assessment, I'll be able to tell you exactly what you need to improve your Quran recitation and pronunciation.